gentlemen, it's me, Mr. Wool, back again in the waiting room in the front of the Carver building at Da Vinci Tree Academy. How are you? I'm well. I hope you are doing well too. This is week 7, day number 5, the last day of our learning week together. So we don't have any big announcements for this week, but I wanted to let you know what's coming. 2 things. First, if you have a birthday in July, we have not forgotten about you. We will be congratulating all of our July birthdays ahead of time, just so we can celebrate you, because again, you are the only month of the year that we have no school in, and so we don't want you to feel left out. So we're going to be doing that in a week or 2. So again, July birthdays, don't worry, we haven't forgotten about you. Thing number 2 is for every day next week for our announcements, we're going to be showing you something fun or interesting that is going to be changing in the school for next year. Since you've been gone, we have been very busy making improvements to the school, little things here and there, and some big ones. Like we have some classes that are actually physically moving around from one class to another class. And so we are going to be reviewing all of those changes next week, and one will be for every day. And so hopefully that, hopefully you tune in for that, and hopefully you like all the changes. I think that'd be great. All right, so let's go ahead and get to the final joke of the day for week 7. And again, these are all just kind of cute and cheesy. And today's joke is, why didn't the shrimp want to share her toys? Why didn't the shrimp want to share her toys? Because she was a little shellfish. Get it? Like selfish, but she's a shellfish because she's a shrimp? Okay. Anyway, I thought it was cute. Folks, wherever you are, whether it's at home, in your bedroom, in your living room, whatnot, let's go ahead and say the Pledge of Allegiance together. So if you're wearing a hat like me, please take it off. Bald head. Please take off your hats. Stand at attention. Place your right hand over your heart, and let's say the pledge together. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, ladies and gentlemen, that's it for our announcements for today. I hope you have a fantastic day of online learning, and we'll see you next week. Take care. Yeah, we're recording, aren't we? Yes, we are. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the final day of week number 7. It's week 7, day number 5. A couple quick middle school specific things before we jump into today's lesson. So middle school specific thing number 1, if you're watching this in the year 2020, we have come to a decision that we will be planning our graduation ceremony for the year 2020 in late July. So again, graduation will be in person, and it will be in late July. We will most likely have to restrict the number of people that attend for, social distancing purposes, and it will most likely be at the same place that we held our dances over the past year or so. And so we will give you more information on that as it comes. If you are a 6th or 7th grader and you would like to attend to cheer on your friends, we are still kind of debating that, and so we're going to be looking at the size of the space and seeing what we can do. So more to come. Thing number 2 for middle school, in yesterday's video, which was exceedingly long, I was supposed to show you the photo from Mariah playing Bernoulli ball. And then when I processed the video and uploaded it, I didn't realize it, but the video dropped the photo. Okay, so anyway, I just wanted to take a moment and show you. Here's the photo. And so I thought that was kind of cool. I just wanted to share that with you, and sorry to Mariah for not including that yesterday. I probably look kind of silly on the video because it wasn't there. And thirdly, I got an email from my friend and yours, Aiden, and Aiden kept it short and sweet. He said, "Hey, Mr. Roll, I'm just wondering, why are we getting homework on Fridays when we didn't normally?" So let me address that for everybody. So you're getting homework on Fridays or day number 5 for two reasons. Primary reason number 1, is that these online courses are like super easy compared to the in-person stuff that we normally do. If we were actually sitting in school in the same room right now, you'd be doing a lot more work than you're doing normally. So that's big reason number 1. And the reason that it is easier is because when you're at home, we all have different home situations. And so it's a lot harder to get work done at home for a lot of us because 1, maybe you have a lot of distractions at home. 2, maybe you have brothers and sisters that are loud and your home environment just isn't very conducive to learning. And 3, you don't have someone like me or Mr. Barbero hounding you all the time to pay attention and stop talking and get off Toby on the couch because you're squishing him, you know. And so because you don't have us hanging over your heads all the time and making sure that you're concentrating, it's a lot harder to get the work done, and so the work is easier, yeah? So that's the first big reason. The second big reason is that because it's all online and it's not live, it's self-paced. I know a lot of you are not doing any work and then you do a bunch of work at one time where you'll take, I don't know, you'll take Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday off, and starting on Saturday you do like a whole week, from Saturday to Monday. And so the days, for those of us who are doing it like that, the days really don't mean anything anyway. So those are the two big reasons, Aiden and friends, why we do have homework on these days that are traditionally Fridays, the day 5s. So good news, as we kind of settle down here, every day the lessons are going to be getting easier and easier. Yesterday our lesson was exceedingly long because we did that long explanation of how to choose your classes. I want to say that if you have any questions about classes and choosing the course catalog and everything like that, just send me an email, even if you're not my student anymore, like if you're going into your sophomore year and you're like, hey, what's your opinion on this, Mr. Roll? I'm happy to help you. If you have some problems with math or something like that, you need to come see us in person. I'm not going to try to remote help you, but you always know that I'm here to help you out. If I have any time and you are in need of any help that I can provide, I'm more than happy to do it for you. Okay. So that being said, let's take a look at today. So, whoops, wrong screen. There we go. Okay. What is this? It's like Zillow search. Oh, there we go. Okay. Good deal. Okay. So, because yesterday's lesson was extra long, today's lesson is going to be extra short. Call it a day 5 miracle. I'm dramatically reducing the amount of work that we're doing today. We are taking a break, so we're not doing life skills. We're taking a break, so we're not doing economics. We will be doing some history, but it'll be extremely short. We will be doing literature. If I relax at all in literature, we will not be taking a break on literature, because even if I take one break in literature, we won't have enough time to finish the book. So we're going to go straight through till week 10 so that we can get this book under our belts. And then we're doing some science. And guess what? Dun, 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 that's it. So we are just doing science, literature, and history today. And that's all. So hopefully it is an easy day 5 for some of you, so you can kind of relax after such a rigorous day 4 yesterday. Okay, let's go ahead and jump into history. All right, so U.S. history. So today for U.S. history, we're going to be watching an 8-minute long video. This 8-minute long video does a really great job in taking everything that we've been talking about for the past maybe week and a half, and it kind of just mushes it all into a really succinct 8-minute long thing. It has a lot of pictures in it, and these pictures, most of them are drawings, but some of them are like photographs. These pictures are actually from the time period that we're talking about. So if you see an illustration, if you see an illustration and you're like, that illustration's maybe kind of racist, okay? The reason for that is that it was actually from the 1800s when everyone was kind of like that, unfortunately. And so, yeah, we're just going to watch that video. Again, it reviews a lot of the stuff actually most of the stuff that we've already talked about, and then talks about a few things that we haven't covered yet. I think it talks about the damming of rivers to use water and some other things like that that we really haven't touched on very much. So yeah, go ahead and watch that, and that's it for your homework for today. Pretty sweet. All right, literature, day number 5, week number 7, and we are discussing chapter, I think it's chapter 20, yeah. And so, I think, where were we in the story? So we just, the last couple of chapters, Tom has come home and from the island with his friends, and first he lied to his Aunt Polly about having a dream, when in reality he was just spying on everybody. And then Aunt Polly found out by talking with, I think, Joe's mom, yeah. And then so she got really upset at him. And then he went off and explained that he wanted to tell her, but he wanted it to be a surprise. And he even wrote her a note and put it in his coat pocket. And then she found it. And so she was like crying and said, hey, you know, I'll forgive him forever, and showing how much she loved him. And then yesterday we talked about the either the gullibility of Aunt Polly, or the love that Aunt Polly has, depending on how you look at it, and then I guess the childish insight that brother Sid has, yeah. And so and then today, so that was the effects. So we're kind of slowly going through the different effects that Tom faces in his little world because of his escapades. And so we saw what happened on the community level with Tom when he kind of waltzed into the funeral and he was like, hey, I'm here, yeah. And so we saw what happened to him on the community level and how everybody embraced him. And then in the last chapter, we saw what happened to him at home when Aunt Polly got upset with him and he had to face the music there. And now, in this chapter, we shift over to the school, and we see the effects that Tom and his little adventures have had at the school. And so, fast forward to the school, and we get there, and his love interest, Becky, is there. And if you remember, Becky played a mean trick on him because she was like PO'd, right? And so Becky took a thing of ink and she poured it in his spelling book. And she did that so that he would get beaten. And when they say whipped, I just want to throw this out there. When they talk about being whipped and beaten, they're not talking about it in a child abuse sense. You know, like you wouldn't see a school teacher or a principal go in there and just like slug a kid in the eye or something like that. But they actually did have like a horse whip or something like that, and they would make the kids bend over a chair, and they'd smack them in the butt. And sometimes they would do it in front of everyone, you know. And so it was a very effective form of punishment because, one, it was embarrassing, and two, they actually did it to make it hurt, and that was a normal thing back then. And in fact, schools have been doing that for a really long time, and they only stopped doing beatings or paddlings recently. For a few years, I went to a private Christian middle school when I was your all's age, and they still did this, like, for my age. And so I had friends who were whipped like this. But by the time it got to me, yeah, I keep on saying yeah, it's like my new okay. By the time it got to my age group, and they were still whipping us, they would whip us for kind of like the embarrassment, but they wouldn't do it really hard. Like it wasn't actually like you were being whipped, like you were being flogged like in ancient times. It was more just like to embarrass the heck out of you, and it worked. It worked really well. But it's really not a thing that is legal anymore. Since I've grown up, it has been banned by most states. I actually don't know if they still do it here in Arizona or not, but they definitely did it when I was your age. So that's something to understand. So they really do mean whipped. Another thing to understand, because I could see you being confused by this, if one of you spilled ink on your textbook, I probably wouldn't be super happy with you. I'd be like, hey man, why'd you do that? You know, like what's going on with you, Travis? Why'd you spill it? And of course, Travis would be like, Ben did it. It wasn't me, Bob, or whatever. And so I wouldn't be happy with you for doing that. But I don't think I would get you in any trouble. I would just be like, well, that's what happens when you're clumsy. Let's clean it up. Yeah, but back then, it's important to understand that in like the 1840s, the technology for printing and binding books was still very expensive. And so, you know, today when you buy a book, you probably go to the store and you might pay like 20 bucks to buy a book. If you have a soft cover book, maybe you can get them for a lot cheaper, like, you know, like $6 to $10 sometimes at like a Target or a Walmart. And you can go to Bookman's and buy used books for anywhere from a quarter all the way up to $5, and you get some really good used books. And so for us, an expensive book is maybe like a $50 book. Like if you want to buy an expensive hardcover textbook, you might pay $50 or $60. When you're in college, they cost like around $100. If you want to buy a really nice like family Bible, or if you're Jewish, you know, like a family Torah, or if you're Muslim, like a family Quran, you know, you can pay $50 to $100 for those religious books to be bound with leather and stuff like that. And so books are relatively affordable for us. Now, in today's money, I would say that an average book back then was probably over $100 in today's money. And that wasn't always the case. Sometimes you got books for cheaper, but books were much more expensive back then. That's the point. And so even a simple book, to have a book published, you know, a cheap book for them was like 60 bucks. Today you spend 60 bucks on your new PlayStation or Xbox video game. For them, those $60 to $100 was spent on a book. And so if you destroyed a book or messed a book up in some way, that was a really big deal. And so then we get to Becky, and for whatever reason, Becky is at the teacher's desk, and she finds a key, and she knows that there's a drawer, I can never say that word right. There's a drawer in the desk that has a book that no one is allowed to read except for their teacher. And obviously she is curious. And so she feels a little better about herself because she just got Tom into some trouble, and she knows that he's going to get whipped when they find out what he did to his spelling book. And so she gets a little adventurous, and she takes that key and she unlocks the drawer, and she takes out her teacher's book. And lo and behold, it is an anatomy book. And she flips it open. I think it was like the first few pages or something like that. And she sees a full diagram of a naked body. And she is in a certain stage of shock because it's not something that she has seen before. All right. And so in that moment, that precious moment, Tom walks in, and the presence of Tom in the room and her looking at the forbidden book with a naked person in it, it startles her, and she rips the page. Right? And given everything that I just told you about how books were more valuable back then and maybe more treasured back then than they are today, she knows that she is in some serious trouble now. And so it's not just going to be Tom that gets whipped, it's also going to be Becky. And she is greatly upset by this. And so one thing leads to another, and she kind of puts the book back. But the teacher finds out. And the teacher finds out, and I think it was I think it was Dobson or Dobbins. I think it was Dobbins. I really need to look. I promise you next week I'm going to reread some of this before we start talking about it. So the teacher, who I think is Mr. Dobbins, comes in, and he's grilling everybody. And to Becky's great surprise, Tom shows some real character. And Tom steps up for Becky and lies, and he takes the fall for her because he knows that he's already in trouble for the spelling book. And now he accepts the blame for ripping the anatomy book too. And he's definitely going to get whipped for that because, one, he snuck in and took the book that he wasn't supposed to take, and two, he ripped it. But, of course, it was Becky that did it. So now, all of a sudden, Tom is taking Becky's beatings for her, and now Tom is Becky's hero yet again. So, smooth move, Tom. And so it's interesting too to see, because this whole story so far, Tom has been showing a lot of really bad character traits. He's shown that he is selfish. He's not. Excuse me. He is immature. He's arrogant and selfish. He is okay with letting everyone who loves him think that he is dead, just to get a rise out of them. It's very immature. But in this moment, Tom shows a real amount of character, where he's willing to sacrifice his own well-being for someone he cares about. And so it's kind of neat. From here on out, we start seeing some more of the less immature and some of the more admirable qualities in Tom Sawyer as the book progresses. Anyway, that's it for literature today. Read chapter 21, do your 5 times each, do your dictionary definitions, and we're good to go. It's time to get to our last class for today, science. All right, so today for science, we are going to be reading 3 pages of sciencey goodness together, and then we're going to move on. Quick reminder, actually not move on, we're going to end the day, because that's it for the day. If you didn't do the questions yesterday, please make sure that you're answering those questions and you're sending them in. We don't care how you answer the questions. If you answer the questions just by typing up an email and sending it over to Mr. Barbera, that works. If you answer the questions by writing the questions on a pad of paper and then taking a photo of it and sending that into us, that works too. So whatever's most comfortable for you, just don't tie it to a brick and try to throw it through a window at the school. We will not be happy with you if you do that. And it won't work because the school has those crazy shields on them. So, all right, let's go ahead and get started. We're learning about simple machines today. And as you learned already, a machine can be anything from a complex computer to something as easy as a ramp. And so machines have this super wide variety to them. You know, technically, from a physics point of view, just a fork and knife are machines. And so let's go ahead and start reading here. Simple machines. Look at the objects shown on these pages. Which of them would you call machines? Would it surprise you to find out that each is an example of a simple machine? As you learned in the last section, a machine helps you do work by changing the amount or direction of the force you need to apply. There are 6 basic kinds of simple machines: the inclined plane, the wedge, the screw, the lever, the wheel and axle, and pulley. So again, plane, wedge, screw, lever, wheel and axle, and pulley. And so all simple machines are based around those 6 designs. Yeah? In this section, you will learn how different types of simple machines help you. Figure number 9. Whether you eat with chopsticks, mix a recipe with an egg beater, screw in a light bulb, or pull in the catch of the day with a fishing pole, you are using a simple machine. So these are all machines and a kind of technology. Yeah? All right, inclined plane. Ooh, I love it when the moving vans have that thing, the inclined plane that hooks onto the back. It makes it so much easier. Every now and again, when I rent one of these trucks, it doesn't have that, and that reminds me of how irritating it is before they all had those. But anyway, inclined plane. Have you ever faced the task of lifting something from a lower level to a higher level? You probably know that the job is much easier if you have a ramp. For example, a ramp makes it much easier to push a grocery cart over a curb or a cart into a truck. A ramp is an example of a simple machine called an inclined plane. An inclined plane is a flat, slanted surface. An inclined plane allows you to exert your input force over a longer distance. If you look at it here, it's almost like a triangle. And if you guys are in like Group 1 math or Group 2, you should know this as well. So the triangle, the longer side there is called the hypotenuse, and it's longer, okay? So the inclined plane, it's increasing the distance, yeah? Just because it is the hypotenuse of the triangle, which is the inclined plane, yeah? Okay. The input force necessary will then be less than the output force. The input force that you use on an inclined plane is the force with which you push or pull an object. The output force is the force that you would need to lift the object without the inclined plane. So when we're talking about the input force, guys, so this girl, question mark, is that a woman or a man? I think it's a woman. Okay. Anyway, sorry, that was rude of me, but don't worry. I don't think that they care, hopefully. Anyway, my apologies. So this individual, man or woman, is using the inclined plane. And so the output force that this person is using is the force that it would take for this individual to pick the box up from the base of the truck and put it into the truck. That's the output force. The input force is the force that this individual uses, the amount of newtons this person uses to push the cart up the inclined plane or up the ramp. And so the amount of force that this person uses to push the cart up the ramp is significantly less than the output force that they would have to expend if they just picked the whole thing up and put it in. Yeah? So the input force is much less, but it's over a longer distance, and the output force is much higher because, again, they'd have to pick it up and it's a heavy box. All right, I hope you understood that, and I apologize if I repeat myself too much. It's just weird for me not being able to look into your eyes and see if you understand this or not, yeah? And you can't ask me any questions in real time, and so I tend to over-repeat. Okay, the output force is the force that you would need to lift the object without the inclined plane, which we just talked about. This force is equal to the weight of the object. So again, however much the object weighs is the amount of newtons that you're going to have to use to pick it up. That's why the weight is equal to the output force. Okay, let's go ahead and read through this. Although the amount of work is the same, whether you lift the loaded cart or push it up the ramp to the truck, you need less force when you use the inclined plane. Advantages of an inclined plane. You can determine the ideal mechanical advantage of an inclined plane by dividing the length of the inclined plane by its height. So the ideal mechanical advantage equals the length of the incline divided by the height of the incline. So again, the length of the incline divided by the height of the incline. The length of the incline, or the distance of this ramp, divided by the height of the incline, or how high it is off the ground. Got it? Suppose you are loading a truck that is 1 meter high, and you set up a ramp 3 meters long, shown as in that picture we've been looking at. The ideal mechanical advantage of this inclined plane is 3 meters divided by 1 meter, or 3.0. This inclined plane multiplies your input force 3 times. So it is 3 times easier for you to get that load up the ramp than it is for you to actually pick it up and put it in. Okay, again, 3 times easier. So you only need to use 1/3 of the force to scoot it up the ramp. What can you conclude about how the length of the inclined plane affects the ideal mechanical advantage? If the height of the incline does not change, increasing the length of the incline causes the ideal mechanical advantage to increase. So the longer the incline, or the less steep the incline, the less input force you need to push or pull an object. So to say that in other terms, kids, if this ramp were longer, then it wouldn't be as steep. And if the ramp were longer, then you wouldn't need as much force to push the cart up the ramp. Now, you might be thinking to yourself, who bloody cares? Because you're just moving stuff up a ramp. It doesn't matter. Well, it does matter, because what happens one day if you are an engineer or a mechanic and you are in charge of fixing a ride at Disneyland or something like that that goes up an inclined plane? And you are the one responsible for calculating how much force the engine needs to exert, and you're the one who's responsible for figuring out whether or not the engine in that vehicle can handle that incline with the amount of weight that you plan on being in that ride. So hopefully I didn't just lose you. Oh, okay. But if you are that person who is responsible for figuring out whether or not the engine inside the ride can make it up that incline, if that is your job, knowing this kind of information about mechanical advantage is crucial. And you don't just need to understand that it's easier to move up a ramp than pick something up. You actually have to be able to do the math and figure out if your design is going to work or not before you have somebody ride. You need to make sure it's safe. So, again, the length of the incline or the length of the ramp divided by the height of the incline gives us our ideal mechanical advantage for that ramp, or that incline plane, I should say. Suppose you are loading a truck that is 1 meter high and you set, didn't we just do this? Yeah. Okay. All right, so we already read the here. So, efficiency of an inclined plane. And so here's the diagram here that shows us what we were just talking about. If the ramp is 3 meters long, it has a multiplying force of 3. And so it is 3 times easier, or you only need 1/3 the force to get the cart up the ramp. Now, if the ramp is 6 meters long, then the multiplying force is 6, and so you only need to use 1/6 the power to get up the ramp. If I lost you on the Disneyland example, let's talk about something a little more close to home that we've all seen. We have all seen people in wheelchairs. And so people in wheelchairs cannot go up stairs unassisted. They need to be able to access a ramp in order to get up. Now, in other countries that don't have laws like we do here in America we have the Americans with Disabilities Act, but in other countries where they don't have great laws like that to help people in wheelchairs might get one of these ramps, a ramp that is very steep. And the amount of force it takes a person to physically get themselves up the ramp might be too much. And unless you're a professional athlete with a disability, you're probably not going to be able to get up that ramp. And I've actually seen that before. It's really sad. And so in other countries, the people in wheelchairs, even if there's a ramp, they need someone to push them. In the United States, though, we actually calculate how steep a ramp can be for an average disabled person to be able to get up the ramp, and we make sure that all of our ramps have that right amount of incline and that right amount of mechanical advantage so that our citizens with disabilities can be fully mobile. And so that's one of the great things about living in America, is that we take care of our disabled people like no one else. And so that's something that we should all be really proud of. But anyway, again, that's how it works, and that's why it's so important that we can actually measure and calculate out the mechanical advantage so that you can help somebody with a disability if you're ever in charge of making these ramps for them. All right, I'm just soapboxing a little bit too much, so let's go ahead and finish this up so you all can enjoy your weekend if you're doing this on a Friday. Efficiency of an inclined plane. Even though an inclined plane has no moving parts, work is lost due to friction, just as it is with any machine. The friction in this case is between the object and the inclined plane. For example, if you pull a crate up an incline, friction acts between the bottom of the crate and the surface of the incline. You can increase the efficiency of an inclined plane by decreasing this friction. There would be less friction, for example, if you put the crate on a dolly with wheels and rolled it up the inclined plane instead of sliding it. So if you didn't understand what they just said, what they're saying is, if you don't have this nice little cart or this nice little dolly, and if you just take the box or whatever and you're pushing it up the ramp, as you push it up the ramp, the bottom of the box is scraping against the ramp, and it's creating a lot of friction and a lot of resistance. And so it's better to have one of these little cart or dollies or whatever you'd like to call them, because they dramatically decrease the resistance because they have wheels. Yeah? Okay. So let's go on to a wedge. So this is an example of a wedge. It's an axe used for chopping wood. A large force is required to split a log into two. But with the use of a wedge, a small force is multiplied to do the job. So again, if you tried to karate chop this log and split it into two, it would take a lot of force. It would take even more force if you tried to split the log into two just by sitting on it. All right? So if you wanted to apply so much force that you could just basically sit the log down, or take the log just like this pencil and compress it until it's split in two, if you wanted to do that, it would take a tremendous amount of force. It takes significantly less force to split the log in two if you don't just try to do this, and if you actually use the axe to chop it in two. Get it? And so the wedge, which is kind of the pointy part of the axe, is our simple machine. So if you've ever sliced an apple with a knife or seen someone chop wood with an axe, you are familiar with another simple machine known as a wedge. A wedge is a device that is thick at one end and tapers to a thin edge on the other end, like a knife. It might be helpful to think of a wedge as an inclined plane with two inclined planes back to back that can move. As in the case of the inclined plane, the longer and thinner a wedge is, the less input force is required to do the same work. In a wedge, instead of an object moving along the inclined plane moves itself. For example, when someone uses an axe to split wood, the person applies an input force to the axe handle. The axe handle exerts a force on the thicker end of the wedge. That force pushes the wedge down and into the wood. The wedge, in turn, exerts its output force that pushes through the wood, splitting the wood in two. Got it? So again, the wedge is the tip of the axe, and it's being pushed into the wood to split it in two. A zipper is another device that depends on a wedge, and maybe you don't know this, but you definitely have a zipper somewhere in your wardrobe or in your dresser, right? Have you ever tried to interlock the two sides of a zipper with your hands? It is almost impossible to create enough force with your fingers to join the two rows of teeth. But when you close the zipper, the part that you pull contains small wedges that multiply your input force. The result is a strong output force that either closes or separates the two sides of the zipper. So do you see this right here? Inside of a zipper, and again, I bet most of you probably were unaware of this. There's that triangular yellow wedge right there, and that wedge separates the teeth of the zipper and brings them apart. And then in turn, the wedge works almost in reverse the other way. It kind of helps funnel them together, but we're not talking about that. We're just talking about how the wedge splits things right now. So you have probably never given much thought to zippers on your clothes, but zippers use wedges to push two sides together. So let's review. Today we learned that there are 6 simple machines, and we specifically went over 2 of them. We went over the inclined plane and the wedge. So keep those in your minds, just kind of floating around throughout this weekend here, because next week we're going to come back and we have, I think, 2 or 3 more days of reading, and then we have to answer questions about all 6 of the simple machines. All right, that's it for your lesson for today. Again, if you're doing this at the normal time on a Friday, have a fantastic weekend, everybody. I hope you are all happy and healthy. For those of you who either have COVID-19 or have family members with COVID-19, you are in my thoughts and prayers daily, and we all support you, and I miss seeing all of you. Anyway, y'all take care, and I'll see you next week for week number 8, day number 1.